Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Medical Board of California Midwife Advisory Council meeting. This meeting is being conducted via WebEx. Public comments will be heard for each agenda item for individuals wishing to speak. In order to be ready for public comment, we ask that you please ensure your comments can be heard clearly by being connected to the audio of this meeting through the proper method. If you're having difficulty hearing the audio of this meeting, it could be because the device you're connecting with has bandwidth limitations. If you do have difficulty hearing the audio of this meeting using your device, please click the ellipsis button at the bottom of the WebEx application or the audio and video menu item at the top of the WebEx application, and then select Switch Audio. You'll see an option to call in. You'll be provided with a telephone number, access code, and attendee ID that can be used to connect to the meeting audio via phone. Using the information provided, it will automatically disconnect your device's audio and connect your phone to the name you joined the meeting with. By using this method, if you are having audio problems with your device, this will still allow you to participate and hear the audio of the meeting. Please see the instructions on how to connect link on the last page of the meeting agenda for step-by-step WebEx instructions, including screenshots. Thank you, Ms. Freeman. You can now start the meeting.
Thank you. All right, so for call to order and roll call to establish a quorum, this meeting is starting at 13:06 or 1:06 p.m. I'd like to welcome you to the Midwifery Advisory Council meeting. My name is Faith Freeman, and I'm the Vice Chair of this Advisory Council. Since this meeting is being conducted via WebEx, I will ask all MAC members and speakers to announce themselves by name before speaking for clarity of the official record. All MAC members are able to unmute themselves to speak during the meeting. Please place yourself back on mute when not speaking to reduce background noise for all participants. Following such online meeting etiquette will ensure the best audio quality for everyone. During each call for comments from MAC members and speakers, we will ensure that all comments that can be accommodated are heard before proceeding with the agenda. During each agenda item, the host monitoring this WebEx event will activate the Q&A and hand-raising features of WebEx and will ask anyone wishing to make a public comment to indicate so by replying yes in the Q&A window or by using the hand-raising features. The host will then call on individuals who indicated they wish to make public comments by name. When called upon, the host will unmute the microphone of the individual and they will be able to make their public comment. After the comment, the individual will be placed back on mute. Please see the agenda for WebEx instructions on how to connect from the link on the agenda and additional instructions. The board's IT staff will assist me with receiving the public comments via WebEx during this meeting. MAC members, as a reminder, during today's meeting, any items requiring a vote will be done by roll call vote. This means that once a motion is made and seconded, Ms. Moriarty will call each of the names individually to request our vote. I would now like to call the meeting to order and ask that Ms. Moriarty please call the roll.
Thank you, Ms. Freeman. Faith Freeman.
Present.
Dr. Kenneth James.
Here.
Tamara Robertson.
Present.
Mason Wilson Tenev.
Present.
And Madeline Weisner. Thank you. We have a quorum.
All right, a quorum is present. So moving to agenda item number 2, public comments on items not on the agenda. Are there any public comments?
Thank you, Ms. Freeman. Anyone wishing to make a public comment, you can do so by using the hand-raising feature or just type anything into the Q&A window there in WebEx if you can't locate the hand-raising feature. You don't have to type out your whole question, just that you'd like to make a public comment, and we can call on you in the order that we see you there. We'll give everyone a few seconds here to queue up. Okay, Ms. Freeman, I'm not seeing any requests.
Okay. So moving on to agenda item number 3, which is approval of the minutes from the February 15th, 2024 Midwifery Advisory Council meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the February MAC meeting minutes from the members?
No.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the February MAC meeting as submitted?
Approve.
And then does anyone second?
Second.
Is there any public comment?
The Q&A window and the hand raising feature are enabled. I'll give everyone a few seconds to see if you'd like to make a public comment on this agenda item. Not seeing any requests.
All right. Ms. Moriarty, if you can please perform the roll call vote.
Faith Freeman,
Yes.
Dr.
Sorry, agree. Yes. Approve.
Tamara Robertson,
Yes.
and Mason Wilson Tanev. Thank you.
So the February 2024 MAC meeting minutes are approved. Okay, so moving to agenda item number 4, which is the report from the Midwifery Advisory Council Vice Chair, myself, Faith Freeman. All right, so the Medical Board's enforcement program has consultant and expert reviewer opportunities for licensed midwives. Consultants evaluate the specific standard of care issues raised by a complainant to determine if further investigation is required. Expert reviewers provide expert reviews and opinion on board cases and testify at administrative hearings. For application and eligibility requirements, go to the board's website at www.mbc.ca.gov, click on the enforcement link, and then the links to the medical consultant and expert reviewer programs. There's also a MAC vacancy. The Medical Board of California board is seeking applications from interested parties for one public member position on the Midwifery Advisory Council, the MAC. The vacant position is for a 3-year term that will run through June 30th, 2027. Are there any questions or comments from the members on the Vice Chair's report? And are there any public comments?
The Q&A window and the hand raising feature are still enabled. If anyone wishes to queue up, please go ahead and do so now. Give you a few seconds. Not seeing any requests this time.
Okay. So agenda item number 5, update on midwifery related legislation by Aaron Bone.
Good afternoon, members. My name is Aaron Bone. I am the board's Chief of Legislation and Public Affairs. Pleasure to be with you all this afternoon. The legislature is now in one of their busiest times of the year as they just passed a major deadline to approve bills introduced this year and face a constitutional deadline to approve the state's budget by June 15. The legislature will be working throughout the month of June, and then starting with the July 4 holiday, will be on recess throughout the rest of July and return to session in early August to complete their work for the year and this the entirety of this 2-year session by August 31st. I do continually review the bills that have been introduced and amended, and so far have not identified any pending legislation that directly impacts licensed midwives. I appreciate your time, members, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bone. Are there any questions or comments from the members? Are there any public comments?
The hand raising feature and the Q&A window are open. Anyone wishing to make a public comment, we'll give you a few seconds to queue up. I'm not seeing any requests this time, Ms. Freeman.
All right. Moving to agenda item number 6, report from the task force on Medi-Cal related issues, Madeline Weisner. Ms. Weisner is not available to provide her update today. We will put this item on the September agenda. Are there any questions or comments from the members? And are there any public comments?
Anyone wishing to make a public comment, go ahead and use the hand raising feature of the Q&A window. Give you a few seconds if anyone queues up. Okay, I'm not seeing any requests.
Okay. Moving to agenda item number 7, program update, Ms. Moriarty. Ms. Moriarty, please proceed with the program update.
Thank you. Please turn to tab 7A1 of the packet for the Midwifery Program licensing statistics. In the third quarter of fiscal year 2023-2024, the board received 7 new applications, issued 8 new licenses, and renewed 53 licenses. Please turn to page 7B1. In the third quarter of fiscal year 2023-2024, the board received 51 transfer of planned out of hospital delivery to hospital reporting forms for licensed midwives. Please turn to page 7C1 for enforcement statistics for licensed midwives. In the third quarter of fiscal year 2023-2024, the board received 10 complaints and referred 1 for investigation. Please turn to page 7C2. In the third quarter of fiscal year 2023-2024, the board received 1 complaint for unlicensed midwives. Please turn to page 7C3 for enforcement statistics for transfer of planned out of hospital delivery to hospital reporting forms for licensed midwives. In the third quarter of the 2023-2024 fiscal year, 51 transfer of planned out of hospital delivery to hospital reporting forms were received by the board and 0 were referred for investigation. Please turn to page 7C4. In the third quarter of the 2023-2024 fiscal year, the board received 2 transfer planned out of hospital delivery to hospital reporting forms for unlicensed midwives, and none were referred for investigation. Thank you. That concludes my update. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Moriarty. Are there any public comments?
The Q&A window and the hand raising feature are enabled. Anyone wishing to make a public comment, we'll give you a few seconds to queue up. Okay, at this time, I'm not seeing any requests.
Moving to agenda item number 8, overview of the enforcement process, Ramona Carrasco.
Good afternoon, members. My name is Ramona Carrasco, and I'm the manager in the Central Complaint Unit. Today, I'm going to go over the enforcement process overview. So please change the slide. The mission of the Medical Board of California is to protect healthcare consumers and prevent harm through the proper licensing and regulation of midwives, physician surgeons, and certain allied healthcare professionals, and through the vigorous objective enforcement of the Medical Practice Act, and to promote access to quality medical care through the board's licensing, policy, and regulatory functions. Change the slide, please. This is just a quick overview of what our process is. It gives you a few steps of how we handle cases or complaints when they come into our unit. I'm going to go over that a little bit. Can we change the slide, please? So once we receive a complaint, and a complaint can come from various entities, it could come from the public, which could be a patient or the patient's family or a friend or someone who's in relation to that person. It could be a mandated report. We do have some reports that are required, just as the transfer form is one of the requirements. It could be from another licensee. It could be from a government agency, from another department, or from law enforcement. It could be an anonymous complaint, or someone can miscellaneously, anonymously or miscellaneously file the complaint. Change the slide, please. So once we receive the complaint, it's triaged here in our office. Change the slide, please. Midwifery complaints, the transfer of planned out-of-hospital delivery to hospital. These are the different types of cases that we receive for midwifery, negligent care and treatment, and also patient abandonment. The transfer out of hospital normally come from a hospital if the patient has been transferred after being cared for by a midwife. Care and treatment is pretty basic and pretty straightforward, and patient abandonment is also. Please change the slide. So once we receive it and determine that it's something that we can work here in our office, the first thing we do is we make contact with the patient or the person who filed the complaint to see if we can obtain an authorization to obtain their patient records. Once we've been able to do that, we're able to contact the midwife for treatment and summary. For treatment, for them to provide us their treatment and their version of what happened and the medical records that they have on that particular patient. We may contact, if the patient was transferred to a hospital, we may request those records possibly if we find that it's necessary. But we definitely write to the midwife regarding the case to determine, if there's any substantiation to the allegation. Next slide, please. Once everything is collected by the analyst here in the office, that would include the records and the response from the subject of the complaint, which would be the midwife. We send it off for a midwifery consultant review. That's an upfront review, which is it's a cursory review. They're going to review all the material that's been collected to determine if there's possibly a violation of the Medical Practice Act. The case is reviewed by a licensed midwife. That person makes that decision. And the possible complaint outcomes that could happen, it could either be just closed or referred for formal investigation, or they could issue a citation if there's a violation. Next slide, please. So if it gets referred to investigation, the investigation it's a formal investigation. They may obtain the patient records if the patient records that we obtained here were not certified, or for whatever reason they may need to get them. They may conduct interviews of all witnesses. That could include the patient or any subsequent treating midwife or anyone else that may have been involved in the treatment of the patient. And they would interview the subject midwife. Next slide, please. Quality of care cases, we request the records, or they would request the records. They could either, if they can't get a medical release from the patient, they could actually obtain those records via subpoena. Interviews the witnesses and the patients, as I mentioned previously, and they would also interview the midwife. And then they would submit all their investigations to an expert reviewer, who would also be a midwife to review the case. Next slide, please. Other types of cases that they could possibly get, they may need to obtain a police report, or they may need to obtain court documents, or request that the licensee go through an evaluation. Usually that involves, like, if there's been concern with impairment, or if there's just any other concern that they feel that would require the evaluation, they could request that of the subject or the midwife. Next slide, please. Possible investigation outcomes, they could close the case. They could also issue a citation and fine. They could refer for disciplinary action, and they could refer for criminal action. Next slide, please. The disciplinary process, An accusation could be filed, and this is a document that states the charges the board has filed against the midwife. It's a first public document, you know, unless there's a suspension issued to the midwife. The notice of defense, the midwife or their attorney can request a hearing by delivering or mailing a notice of defense to both the Deputy Attorney General and to the medical board. If the notice of defense isn't received, it's presumed that they may have waived their right to contest the accusation, and the board can act on that particular accusation. Next slide, please. There are 3 types of decisions. A stipulated settlement, which is an agreement between the between the midwife and the board on an appropriate discipline. An administrative hearing would be a hearing that resembles a court trial, and it's heard by an administrative law judge who drafts the proposal. The proposed decision is sent to the panel for the board, who can adopt the decision as proposed, reduce the penalty and adopt the decision, or non-adopt the decision and set the matter of oral argument in front of the panel of the board members assigned to the case. A default decision: if the respondent fails to file a notice of defense, then HQE drafts a default decision. Next slide, please. All decisions go to a panel of the board except the surrender of a license and the default decision, and they can either adopt, non-adopt, or reject. Next slide, please. Disciplinary outcomes. The midwife their license can be, revocation or surrender. They could be placed on probation with terms and conditions that can include educational programs, prohibited practices, prescribing restrictions, practice and billing monitors. They could be suspended, public reprimand, accusation withdrawn or dismissed. Next slide, please. These are the enforcement statistics for fiscal year 2022 and 23. We received 25 complaints. 11 of those went to investigation and 10 disciplinary actions were taken. Next slide, please. Final reporting. These are areas where reports can be found on the board's website, the National Practitioners Database, or our newsletter, the medical board's newsletter. Next slide, please. If anybody has any questions.
I have one question.
Okay.
Dr. James, it looks like you went on mute after you said that.
Right. Is abandonment just when you don't attend a patient throughout her care or her delivery, or is it if a patient needs to be transferred to a hospital and you just have them drive themselves to the emergency room?
Abandonment is if you just leave the patient and just stop treating them without notifying them or saying anything, and they can't get a hold of you or do anything with you. The transfer form is not involved in the abandonment.
Okay. So if they just say, you need to go to the hospital, and you just say, go to the hospital, that's not considered abandonment. That's just
Correct.
transferring. Okay.
Correct.
What about if they don't notify the hospital or any covering transfer of care? Is that abandonment, or is that just, bad communication?
So you mean that if the patient just goes to the hospital, or if
like I said, if the midwife is caring for the patient at home and says, oh, you need to go to the hospital for whatever reason, if the patient just goes without any communication between the midwife and the hospital, is that an abandonment, or is that just poor communication?
Well, this is after the midwife asked or advised the patient to go to the hospital.
100%. Right.
Yeah, that's not abandonment.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Perfect.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
One is about clarifying the terms. So it does seem like some of these terms could use clarification, especially adoption and non-adoption. I'm curious what the differences are. Is there a document that lists what the definitions are of these terms?
There's information on the website that lists a better description.
Okay, thank you. So the information's on the website. And then my other question is, are the names of the LM, the licensed midwife reviewers, made public?
No.
Okay. And is that information available to the medical board, to the MAC board, or to anybody else here?
Here at the board, we have the names. I don't know if at the MAC board they would have them. I know here at the medical board, here in our office, because we are, you know, and at the field, they would have the names because, you know, we use them.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
I have a couple questions.
Certainly.
What was the, I missed right there when you were mentioning where the public can look to see like the outcomes and the complaints. You were saying it's posted somewhere online?
So those are statistics
Statistics.
that are posted. Case outcomes aren't found on the website unless there's been discipline taken against the midwife and it's public record. That information will be posted.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, as far as complaints are concerned, that's not posted. It's not public.
Okay. And where did you say the discipline would be posted?
It's on the website. If you go to the search and you type in the disciplinary process, it'll come up and it has definitions.
Okay.
And it breaks it down more in more detail for you.
And that's on the medical board's website?
Yes, ma'am.
And then my other question is, how long does the disciplinary process typically take, or it just varies?
It varies. I honestly couldn't answer that question because I'm not with the discipline unit, but I would guess it would vary depending on the situation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
If I can just add to, this is Marina O'Connor. I just wanted to add that I believe the physician and surgeon case timelines are available in like our board statistics that we post for the board meetings. There's the midwifery stats we provide are just for the MAC. There's just so few cases. There's, you know, I don't even know if you could get necessarily an average. You'd probably have to do an average over like multiple years to get an average of processing times. But, you know, if that's something the MAC's interested in having for MAC meetings, we could look at how we could do that. I think again, the only issue is going to be volume because there's such few cases. But if, again, I was just mentioning the physician surgeon stats in the board meeting materials, because if you wanted to get an idea of just the average, you know, for all cases, all physician surgeon cases, that's obviously the majority of our cases, you could see that there, just because there might not be a whole lot to compare it to for midwives.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Freeman.
Yes.
This is Carrie Webb. I'm happy to talk about adoption, non-adoption, and rejection a little bit further, since a question came up on that.
Yes.
The adoption, so if there is a proposed decision that's issued by an administrative law judge or a proposed stipulation for discipline, then those go to a panel of the board, depending on the last name of the licensee. So we have panel A and panel B split in half on the alphabet. And the board members can then choose to adopt the proposed decision or adopt the proposed stipulation. For a proposed decision, the board members can choose to non-adopt it, which means they want to see the transcript from the administrative hearing and all of the evidence, and they provide the licensee and the Attorney General's office an opportunity to have oral and or written argument regarding the case. They can also choose to reduce the penalty that's in the proposed decision, but if they want to increase the penalty, they have to provide the parties an opportunity to argue. The rejection refers to rejecting a proposed stipulation. and they can reject it outright and request that it go to hearing, or they can make a counteroffer, such as adding an additional term, and sometimes they could choose to reduce the proposed discipline if they believe that a reduction would be appropriate for consumer protection and also rehabilitation of the licensee. So those hopefully better explain what those terms are.
Thank you. Are there any more questions from anyone on the MAC board? Okay. And are there any public comments?
And the Q&A window and the hand raising feature enabled. Anyone wishing to make a public comment, go ahead and queue up. We'll give you a few seconds. Okay, I'm not seeing any requests at this time.
Okay. So moving to agenda item number 9, which is selection of one new MAC member for the vacant public member position. Ms. Moriarty, would you please proceed with the update?
Thank you. In February 2024, the Medical Board posted a recruitment announcement on its website for one public member position on the Midwifery Advisory Council. This position is for a 3-year term that will expire on June 30th, 2027. The board did not receive any applications for the public member position that met the requirements for this consideration. This position will be re-advertised on the board's website after this meeting. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments from the members? And any public comments?
The Q&A window and hand raising feature available. If anyone wishes to make a public comment, please go ahead and do that. We'll give you a few seconds to queue up. Okay, I don't see any requests at this time.
Okay, so agenda item number 10 is future agenda items. Do we have any standing agenda items that have been discussed at this meeting?
Yes, Ms. Freeman, I'll go over the standing agenda items. We have the standing agenda items are approval of the minutes, report from the MAC chair, update on midwifery related legislation, and the program update. And for the September meeting, we will have an LMAR update. We will also have the selection of one new MAC member for the vacant public member position. We'll have discussion and possible action regarding 2025 MAC meeting dates. We will have a presentation on midwife access to audiology equipment and training by Mason Wilson-Tenev. And we will add back to the agenda the report from the task force on Medi-Cal related issues.
Thank you, Ms. Moriarty.
You're welcome.
Do any members have agenda items for the next MAC meeting? Okay. Are there any public comments?
The Q&A window and the hand raising feature available. Anyone wishing to request a future agenda item, please go ahead and queue up now. Give you a few seconds. Okay, I'm not seeing any requests.
All right, so this is the end, and we've reached the adjournment, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.